Eleanor Whitmore loved a man in silence, and he loved her back in ways she never knew. She wrote letters she never sent, 70 years ago. No one ever read them until now. This is a love that waited 4 decades to be discovered, and the story that will break your heart. Welcome to Lovelock Tales. Before we continue, if you like timeless romance like this, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. Now, let's get into the story. There are some houses that do not feel empty when the people leave them. They feel unfinished. As though the walls are still holding their breath. As though something inside is waiting to be remembered. This was one of those houses. Eleanor Whitmore had lived here for most of her life. And now she was gone. Not suddenly, not violently. Just quietly. The kind of passing that leaves behind rooms exactly as they were. As though time hesitated out of respect. Clara had come to help clear the house, not because she wanted to, but because someone had to. It was her grandmother's home, the place where holidays were spent, where familiar smells lingered long after meals ended, where stories were told, but never this one. Clara moved slowly through the rooms, touching things that felt too personal to discard, old books, photographs that no longer had anyone left to name the faces in them. Drawers filled with carefully folded memories. And then she climbed the narrow stairs to the attic. The attic was colder than the rest of the house. Dust floated freely there, catching the light in quiet spirals. Everything smelled like aged paper. Time. This was where things were placed when they no longer fit into daily life, but were too important to throw away. Clara was not looking for anything specific. She was only trying to finish. Then she saw it. A small wooden box, not hidden, not locked. Just waiting. It was wrapped in cloth, faded soft, and folded with care, the kind of care you give to something you mean to return to someday. Clara hesitated before touching it. Some objects carry weight before they are ever opened. Inside the box were letters, dozens of them, all written in the same handwriting, careful, deliberate, feminine but strong. Each envelope had yellowed with age. Each one was sealed and unopened. Clara lifted the first letter gently, as though it might crumble under her fingers. On the front was a name she did not recognize. Thomas Hale. She frowned. She read it again. Thomas Hale. The ink had faded, but the intention remained. The paper was fragile, but the words had survived. None of the letters had been sent. No stamps, no postmarks. Just silence. It was then that Clara realized something unsettling. Her grandmother, the woman she thought she knew completely, had lived an entire love story she never spoke about. Her grandmother, the woman she thought she knew completely, had lived an entire love story she never spoke about. Not once. Not in memory. Not even in regret. And now, that story had no one left to hear it. And now, that story had no one left to hear it. Some love stories are not buried with the dead. They linger. They wait. They fold themselves into boxes and climb into attics and trust time to choose the right person to uncover them. They wait for the next generation to find them. And Clara, standing alone in the attic, holding a letter that had never been sent, did not yet know that she was about to uncover the greatest heartbreak of her grandmother's life. Or that the truth waiting inside those envelopes would arrive 70 years too late. Love rarely announces itself. It doesn't knock. It doesn't warn. Most of the time, it arrives quietly while life is busy being ordinary. That was how it found Eleanor Whitmore and Thomas Hale. Not through intention, not through planning. By accident. Not through intention, not through planning. By accident. It happened on a morning that felt unremarkable. The kind of morning no one would later think to remember. The sky was undecided, the air neither warm nor cold. Eleanor had stepped out of her routine just slightly. A different path, a small delay, nothing that felt important at the time. Thomas was there because he always was, working, observing, moving through the world carefully, as though trying not to disturb it. Their first interaction lasted only moments, a brief exchange, polite and remarkable to anyone watching. A brief exchange, polite and remarkable to anyone watching. And yet, something settled between them. Not excitement, not certainty, recognition. They came from different worlds. Eleanor carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone raised with options. Her education showed in the way she spoke, the way she asked questions, the way she expected answers. There was an ease to her presence, a familiarity with being listened to. Expectations had followed her entire life. Who she should be, who she should become, who she should eventually choose. Thomas lived differently. His days were shaped by a work that asked more of his hands than his voice. He moved with restraint, as though always aware of his place in a room. Ambition lived in him but quietly. Not the kind that demands attention, the kind that waits patiently, unsure of when it will be allowed to speak. He had learned early that some dreams must remain private, if you don't want to be disappointed. She did not look at him as though she were evaluating him. She did not soften her voice out of politeness or sharpen it out of distance. She spoke to him as though he belonged. And Thomas, unused to that kind of attention, found himself answering more honestly than he meant to. There was ease between them. Not forced, not performed. The kind that happens when two people stop guarding themselves without realizing it. Their conversations stretched longer than necessary. Not because they had much to say, but because silence between them did not feel urgent. It felt safe. They began to look for each other without admitting it. Thomas noticed when Eleanor hadn't passed by. Eleanor noticed when his presence was absent. Their meetings became regular, though never planned, moments stitched together by coincidence. A smile, a question, a shared observation about something ordinary. And somewhere in those small exchanges, something began to form. Not passion, but trust. The feeling of being seen, not as who you were expected to be, but as who you actually were. Eleanor felt it first. The relief of not having to perform, of not having to impress. With Thomas, she could simply exist. Thomas felt it too, though he was slower to name it. With Eleanor, he did not feel smaller. He felt steadier, as though the world made more sense when she was near. They did not speak of love, they spoke of days, of ideas, of things that mattered in quiet ways. And that was how it grew. And noticed, unchallenged. Until it was already there. Love does not check backgrounds before arriving. It does not ask for permission from society or wait for circumstances to align. It appears, and then asks questions later. And by the time Eleanor and Thomas realized what had taken root between them, it already felt too real to dismiss. Neither of them knew then that this love found by accident would become the one they measured all others against, or that the very differences that made their connection so honest would one day make it impossible to hold onto. But for a moment, just a moment, love was enough. Love is never simple. Not when it comes quietly without warning, not when it arrives at a time and place where the world insists it doesn't belong. Eleanor Whitmore did not see it. She saw Thomas Hale, and that was enough. She saw the man who made her laugh, who listened without judgment, who made her feel lighter simply by existing nearby. She did not see the world that separated them. She did not see the weight of expectation that pressed on him. She did not see the silent questions in his eyes when society's gaze landed on him. Thomas saw it all. Every glance that lingered too long, every subtle gesture that whispered, "He does not belong here," every conversation where wealth, education, and class hung in the air like an invisible wall. He noticed how people judged him not because he failed to try, but because he did not carry the same advantages Eleanor had been given, the same safety, the same freedom, the same certainty. And he wondered if love alone was enough. In his quiet moments, Thomas reflected on what he believed a man must offer: a home, a future, stability. Love, he realized with a sinking ache, was not enough if the world demanded more. He began to measure himself against a standard he could never meet. The polished shoes of Eleanor's circle, the confident ease with which her family spoke of university, travel, connections, the subtle assumptions that he would someday catch up. And for the first time in his life, Thomas felt small. But Eleanor, she noticed none of this. She only noticed him. She only noticed the quiet moments when he caught her hand instinctively, when his laughter joined hers without effort, when his eyes softened as he watched her speak. She did not see the calculations he made in his head or the hesitations that lingered behind his smiles. To her, love was enough. Thomas wanted to be enough for her. He wanted to provide her with more than smiles, more than laughter, more than himself. He wanted her life to be easy, untouched by struggle or doubt, and he feared he could never deliver that. So he tried silently to make himself better, working longer hours, saving every penny, learning every skill he could, but none of it ever felt enough. He began sketching Eleanor in secret. Not portraits for public display, not gifts or souvenirs, but drawings that captured the way the sunlight fell on her hair, the way her lips curved when she smiled at something small, the quiet grace in the tilt of her head as she listened. He sketched what he could not say. He sketched what he feared he could never give her in life. Eleanor began writing letters. At first, just notes to herself, notes about her day, her thoughts, her growing affection. But slowly, the letters became addressed to Thomas. Her words were honest, unguarded, full of things she could not say aloud, things she feared might be too much for him to hear or for the world to allow. And then she tucked them away. Never sent, never shown, hidden, but not forgotten. She wrote because she needed to, because love demanded to be expressed, even if no one would ever read it. Meanwhile, Thomas struggled in silence. He feared that staying with her would chain her to a life smaller than she deserved, and yet, leaving Eleanor felt like breaking his own heart before the world could. Every glance he cast her way was a mix of longing and restraint. Every smile was shadowed by the weight of unspoken doubt. This was the difference that love could not silence. Eleanor believed love itself was enough. Thomas believed love alone was never enough. Two hearts beating in harmony, yet trapped in discord. It was in these quiet and remarkable moments that the tragedy of their love began to take root. Not through violence, not through betrayal, not through hatred, but through silence, through fear, through the invisible walls of a world neither could change. And yet, despite everything, despite doubts, differences, and impossible expectations, they remained drawn to each other. Because love, even when burdened by fear and inequality, cannot help but reach toward its counterpart. For now it was enough to be near, to laugh together, to speak together, to feel seen. And so their story continued. Written in glances, hidden sketches, and letters that might never see the light of day. A love that the world could not silence, but that fear might eventually claim. Love, when it arrives quietly, often leaves quietly too. It does not shout. It does not demand attention. It slips away while the world is busy noticing everything else. Thomas Hale had loved Eleanor Whitmore with a quiet devotion that was impossible to measure, and yet love alone was not enough. Over weeks, then months, something began to change. At first, it was small. The way he lingered slightly less in conversation, the way he seemed distracted when she spoke, the way his hands so steady before now fidgeted or remained folded in his lap. Eleanor noticed these things. Of course she did. But she misread them. She thought Thomas was tired, busy, preoccupied with work or obligations. She did not understand that his absence of attention was not about her, it was about him. Thomas withdrew not from disinterest, but from fear. The fear that he was not enough, not for her, not for her family, not for the life he believed she deserved. Every smile he gave her became measured, every word carefully chosen, every touch restrained. He was still present, but the presence carried a shadow now, a quiet tension that Eleanor could not place. She tried to reach him. She laughed a little louder. She asked questions. She offered reassurance. She leaned closer, hoping he would lean back. And he did not. He could not. Not because he did not love her, but because he believed love alone could not protect her from the realities he could not change. Then came the day he left. It was quiet. There was no argument, no explanation, no grand goodbye. Just absence. The chair where he usually sat remained empty. The path he always took to see her was untraveled. The world shifted slightly, and Eleanor felt it immediately. She searched for him. She called his name in her mind. She tried to reason with reality, to tell herself it was only temporary. Days turned into weeks. And still, nothing. She waited. She hoped. She whispered his name in empty runes. And when hope became heavy with doubt, she wrote. She wrote because the truth was too heavy to carry silently. She wrote letters to the man who would never read them. Letters filled with questions, letters filled with longing, letters filled with heartbreak. She wrote about her confusion, about the moments that had meant everything, about the emptiness that now seemed permanent. And though she poured herself onto the page, there was no accusation, no anger. Only love, only unanswered questions, only the ache of a heart trying to understand something it could not. 70 years later, her granddaughter, Clara, would open these letters. Clara would feel Eleanor's love and confusion as vividly as if she were sitting in that same room, reading each carefully penned word. And Clara would begin to understand something even Eleanor never knew. That the person who left her grandmother never stopped loving her. Because sometimes silence rewrites the truth. It does not erase love. It does not erase devotion. It only hides it until someone is finally ready to see it. Eleanor's letters would wait, folded and secret, hidden from the world, carrying the story of a love that endured through absence, through misunderstanding, through a lifetime of unspoken words. And in that silence, the foundation was laid for the story Clara would one day uncover. A story of love, of regret, of devotion that could never be broken by distance or time. Love, when it cannot speak aloud, often finds another voice. For Eleanor Whitmore, that voice became paper, ink, words that flowed directly from her heart to the page, without filter, without expectation. She began to write shortly after Thomas left. At first, the letters were simple notes, almost ordinary. I saw the first snow today. It reminded me of you. I wondered if you saw it too, or if it mattered at all. But as days turned to weeks, the letters grew in weight, each one a quiet plea, a question, a confession. I do not understand why you are gone. I do not understand why I cannot find you where I always thought you would be. I keep telling myself it is for the best, but every night I hear your absence in the quiet. She wrote in secrecy, folding the pages carefully, sealing them in envelopes, and placing them in a small wooden box. No stamps, no address, no intention of sending them. Because some words, Eleanor decided, were too fragile to travel through the world, too vulnerable, too dangerous to expose to reality. The letters became her sanctuary. She wrote of her love, of the moments that had meant everything. I remember the first time you laughed at my clumsy attempt to carry all the books from the library. I remember the way your eyes caught the light and made me believe the world could be gentle. I wonder why I never told you then how much that moment meant. She wrote of confusion. Why did you leave? Was I not enough? Was it me, or the life you thought I deserved? I do not know the answers, but I cannot stop asking the questions. And she wrote of hope, even when hope was fading. I hope you are well. I hope you are safe. I hope that, wherever you are, you think of me sometimes not with sadness, but with the smallest warmth. That is all I ask. But the most haunting letters were those written in the quietest hours of the night, when Eleanor's heart was too heavy to bear alone. I love you as I have never loved anyone, and yet I cannot call your name aloud. I cannot reach you. I cannot ask you to stay, and so I write, hoping that these words will carry what I cannot speak. I feel your absence in every room I enter. I hear it in every footstep on the stairs, in every whisper of wind against the window. If you are out there, I hope you know that my heart has not stopped for a single moment. The letters grew in intimacy and vulnerability. They spoke of moments Thomas would never know she remembered. I remember the first time you held my hand without thinking, the warmth, the quiet strength of it. I have never forgotten, and I never will. I think of you when I wake, when I sleep, when I feel both the smallest joys and the deepest sorrows. Every thought of you is a treasure I cannot keep, and a pain I cannot share. And yet, through all her writing, Eleanor never placed blame, never anger, never bitterness. Only love, only longing, only the ache of absence she could not understand. She wrote not to send, she wrote because love demanded it, because the truth of her heart needed to exist somewhere, even if no one ever read it. She wrote for herself, and in some way she wrote for Thomas too, though he would never know it. I wonder if you think of me. I wonder if you remember me as I remember you. I hope, even in the smallest moments, you feel the echo of what we had, what we shared, what we could not keep. And as decades passed, the letters remained tucked away. A hidden testament to a love the world would never witness. Words that survived time and absence. Words that waited for someone who might finally understand. 70 years later, in the attic of a house filled with dust and memory, her granddaughter Clara would open the box. She would read letter after letter, page after page, and discover a heart poured onto paper in full, unguarded devotion. And in those letters, Clara would see her grandmother as she truly was. A woman who loved completely, deeply, and reservedly. A woman who never stopped, even when the world told her she should. These letters, unsent and unseen, held the full weight of a lifetime. They were the proof of love. They were the confession of absence. They were the echo of a story that time itself had tried to bury, but could not. Love, Eleanor's letters revealed, is not always loud. It does not always demand to be seen. It does not always insist on recognition. Some love speaks only in silence. Some love waits, and waits, and waits. Thomas Hale had left Eleanor Whitmore physically, but never emotionally. He moved through life with her in his mind, in the quiet corners of his days. Every brushstroke he made, every sketch, every painting, carried her presence, a smile remembered, a tilt of the head, the way her hair fell in sunlight. It was as if his heart had learned a new language, a language that spoke in color, in shape, and shadow. For decades, he painted in secrecy, not for exhibition, not for money, not even for recognition. For Eleanor, each painting told a story. Some were of her as he first saw her, bright, curious, laughing. Others captured her in moments she would never know or immortalized. Standing alone in a garden, sunlight catching the edges of her hair. Reading at a window, lost in thought, oblivious to the world. Walking through autumn leaves, her expression serene, unguarded. No one saw these paintings, not family, not friends, not strangers. He kept them tucked away, hidden in a small private studio. Even as the world demanded his attention, he could not let go. Each canvas was a conversation he could not have with words, each color a letter he could not send. And yet, despite the silence, his devotion never wavered. He married no one, he loved no one else. He lived a life measured not by society's standards, but by the quiet constancy of his own heart. There were days when he nearly gave up entirely, when he felt the weight of absence, the impossibility of connection, the futility of loving someone who would never know. And yet, he returned to the canvas. He returned to the memory of her laugh, the memory of her eyes, the memory of what had been stolen by circumstance, and what could never be returned. Each painting was a testament to love unspoken, a testament to devotion unseen, a testament to a life lived for the memory of someone else's happiness. Because this love was not meant for the world, it was meant only for Eleanor. He aged, the lines on his face deepened, his hands became less steady, but never less devoted. He painted still, each work a silent prayer, each brushstroke a whisper of longing. By the end of his life, there were dozens of paintings, all of Eleanor, all of the woman who had unknowingly carried his heart with her everywhere. It was only when Clara, Eleanor's granddaughter, entered the story decades later that this silent devotion would finally be revealed. For Thomas, love had not ended. It had only waited. It had only spoken in a language the world could not hear. And so it remained. Love that never spoke, but never ended. A life spent in quiet remembrance, in secret creation, in unwavering devotion. Clara would one day discover the truth. The letters her grandmother wrote would speak of unanswered longing, but the paintings would finally answer. They would show her that Thomas never stopped loving Eleanor, never left her heart behind, and never let a day pass in which she did not exist in his world. Some love stories do not end. They do not fade. They do not disappear. They wait. They wait in letters hidden in a wooden box. They wait in brushstrokes no one sees. They wait in the quiet devotion of a life spent loving someone who could not, for reasons beyond their control, be kept. And when the next generation finally uncovers them, the truth can be more beautiful, more heartbreaking, more enduring than anyone could have imagined. Some stories wait decades to be told. Some truths are buried in silence, hidden in forgotten corners, waiting for the right eyes to finally see them. Clara walked through the small, understated gallery, unaware that she was about to witness one of the most extraordinary stories of love she would ever encounter. She was there for the exhibition, she told herself, a quiet Saturday morning, a chance to see paintings by a little-known artist. She did not know she would see Eleanor. The first painting caught her breath. It was a woman standing in sunlight, framed by a window. The pose was unremarkable, ordinary even, but the face? Clara froze. It was her grandmother, or at least, it looked like Eleanor. The tilt of the head, the curve of the lips, the way her hair fell across her shoulder. Her breath caught in her throat, her hands trembled slightly. She moved closer. The painting was unsigned, entitled. No hint of the artist's identity, except the quiet, profound care in every brushstroke. She scanned the next painting. Another, and another. Some were joyful, some contemplative, some lonely, lost in thought. Clara's heart raced. She saw not just resemblance, but devotion. The devotion of someone who had loved her grandmother for decades in silence. The devotion of someone who had never let a day pass without carrying her image in his heart. And then she saw the name, Thomas Hale. Her mind paused, her hand shook, her eyes scanned the gallery wall again and again. It could not be. Yet it was. Thomas Hale, the man whose name appeared on every one of Eleanor's unsent letters, was the artist. Every painting in this small, hidden studio gallery told the same story. He had never stopped loving Eleanor. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. The letters she had read, words of longing, confusion, unfulfilled hope, suddenly made sense. The absence that had haunted Eleanor's life was not absence at all. It had been love, held too quietly, too carefully, for fear of not being enough. Thomas had left not because he stopped loving her, but because he believed that love alone was not enough. And yet in these paintings, love became eternal, love became visible, love became undeniable. Clara walked from painting to painting, absorbing decades of devotion, of unspoken words, of silent longing. A young Eleanor reading in the garden. Eleanor laughing by a river. Eleanor at a window, lost in thought. Each one a testament, a declaration that survived time, distance, and the impossibility of their union. She finally understood something profound. Her grandmother had loved deeply, Thomas had loved even more deeply, and neither of them had ever known that the other never stopped. The letters had been the voice of Eleanor's heart, the paintings the voice of Thomas' heart. And now, finally, in this quiet gallery, their hearts spoke together. Clara felt the weight of it, the beauty, the sorrow, the longing. Some loves are not measured by duration, not by proximity, not even by recognition. They are measured by constancy, by devotion, by the courage to love quietly, persistently, faithfully, even when it cannot be returned. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice in the stillness. Some love stories are not buried with the dead. They wait for someone to find them. They wait for someone who will finally see what we could not say. And in that moment, Clara understood. Love does not always need closure. Love does not always need words. Love only needs to endure. And endure it had. For 70 years, in silence and secrecy, Thomas' love had never wavered. For 70 years, Eleanor's love had been unwavering, even in unanswered longing. And now, through letters and paintings, their hearts could finally meet again. Some love stories do not end. They do not fade. They do not vanish into memory. They wait for the right eyes to finally see them.
I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did and you love stories like this, there is more where this came from. Please subscribe and hit the like button, and I'll see you on the next one.